Hi, welcome to Inside the Moms Club, where being a mom is the coolest place to be. Here in the Moms Club, we believe that what embarrasses you now will make a great story later. And let's face it, you don't laugh sometimes, you're gonna cry. Join us in having a good laugh together. I'm Monica Samuels. You are now inside the Moms Club, your private destination for all things mom. Hi, moms. I'm Monica Samuels, and I'm here with my co-host today, Raha Dixon.
Hi,
hey, Raha. Nice to be here. We're here in Los Angeles, which is very exciting. We are so excited to be here.
Oh, yeah.
Because the trip yesterday was pretty much a nightmare. So that's a story in and of itself. But I've been traveling so much the last several months that I'm just getting disoriented to the point that I'm having very vivid dreams.
Oh, what did you dream?
That I remember. Oh, well, it's okay. Now, we're both attorneys, so logic is really important.
Yeah.
So I had a dream where I was in college, and it was spring break, and my friend and I decided to travel across the country back home on bicycles.
Oh, wow.
Now, I should have known, first of all, this was definitely a dream, because none of the other students in my class were wearing hoop skirts or anything, so I knew it, was not something that happened to me.
Okay.
But I started to pack for the trip, and I packed this giant suitcase, and which I do. That's what I'm known for, is I overpack for everything. In fact, I once took my son to a Cub Scout thing on the battleship Texas, and I brought this giant suitcase, and when we got to the ship and I was handing my suitcase below, the guy was grabbing it, and he said, ma'am, this ain't the Four Seasons.
And you're like,
and
what?
Yeah, because
where
and he
am
was
I?
right, and he was right. It was not the Four Seasons. The battleship Texas was not the Four Seasons.
So you took this suitcase for your bike ride?
So logically,
yeah.
nothing woke me up to say, how am I going to ride a bicycle with a big suitcase?
Doesn't matter, because in a dream you can do that.
I know, but you know what stopped me? Here's what stopped me and woke me up, is when I realized, well, I can't ride a bicycle across the country like that because I don't know how to change a bike tire. So that's what stopped me. I woke up, oh, no, I don't know how to change a bike tire.
Wow.
So, but so I'm having these dreams, and
in reality, the last time I packed to go somewhere with my husband, the funniest thing happened. I was just putting stuff like in my little carry-on. And then I noticed he put stuff in my carry-on, and I was like, what's that about? Maybe I'll go get his. So then I went and got it, and I put it right next to my carry-on. And then I realized he's not putting anything in the one I put next to mine. And then he's like, okay, babe, so we'll just take one, right? And I was like, can I please take my own carry-on? And that was so hard to get out of my mouth. It was really tough. And he went, oh. And I was like, wow, it's a thing. We're going to have a conversation.
Well, and you remind me. See, my husband, he will sneak some of his stuff into my suitcase.
What is that, moms?
It's a weight thing. He thinks, he's like, you're going to carry the weight so that I don't get credit for it. When we check in, he can put more weight in his bag.
No.
So then I go back and I just sneak it back into his, under some of his clothes, so he doesn't know that I caught him doing that. So it's like this ongoing thing.
So the winner is the person who is the last one to slip it to the other side.
Exactly, before the other one. Yeah, before the other one notices. So
see what fun games you play when you've been married for so long.
You know what? The good news is I know that he needs me. So for example, this morning, I get a phone call after the crazy trip yesterday that was so awful from the bug master, the guy that's doing our pest control.
Oh.
It's a company named Bugmaster in Austin, Texas. And so the guy calls me and he said, I need you to open the door because I have your service. And I said, well, my husband and my son are there. And he said, well, nobody's answering. And I said, well, you know what? Just ring the bell because the dogs will get them to the front door. He said, Mrs. Samuels, I know that. That's why I'm calling you, because I don't want the dogs at the front door, because my dogs, I have Luca, who's the new puppy, and Cookie, who's 9 years old and just had a knee replacement, or I don't know what to call it for a dog. She just had major surgery. and at the door, they're uncontrollable.
Well, if he hasn't just had knee surgery, how is he uncontrollable?
He's not. She's not supposed to be. Well, she's supposed to be on a leash for 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh, okay.
But we sort of kind of let.
And your
that one
husband
slide.
could not keep the dogs in from the bug guy?
Nobody can. That's why we need help. we need help because. Oh, and that's the other thing. When the dogs start barking, when there's a conference call or something going on, the dogs start barking. My husband loses his mind, and he hollers for me to get them to be quiet. And I'm like, "What am I, the dog whisperer?"
Yeah.
And what do you want me to do? I can't. I don't know how to be quiet.
The point is, he needs you.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
Which I appreciate.
Yeah.
And I love about him. So we are so lucky today to have someone who can help me, hopefully, with some of my problems with my dogs, who I love dearly.
Not with the husband, only with the dogs.
Well, we're going to do a different show on how to deal with that. Actually, I believe that's a series, but that's a whole other thing. So, because today we have with us a mom, a pet owner, a certified trainer, dog behavior counselor, and lead animal trainer for Fear Free, which has as its mission reducing fear, anxiety, and stress in animals and enhancing positive behavior.
That's amazing.
Which is so important. I mean, especially for my dog. She's the daughter of America's vet, Dr. Marty Becker, and I'm very familiar with Dr. Marty Becker because I have seen everything you can think of to try to solve my pet problems, so he's very helpful. And she's the mom to a 7-year-old daughter, Reagan, and also the mom to 2 lovely puppies here. Welcome, Mikkel Becker. Welcome to the Moms Club.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. I mean, we really could do this show as series or spend all day here talking to you because, as I said, it's been interesting having 2 dogs, and especially our second dog. I don't want to call him a COVID puppy, but lots of people got pets during COVID. And so we got Luca during COVID, and Raha got her dog during COVID. Yeah. And it's been interesting for me because I've had lots of pets in my life, but Luca especially is different because when we got him, don't want a lot of judgment here, but we got him from a breeder of Labradoodles. He's a Labradoodle. And he's afraid of people. And it was not like he'd been somewhere. He wasn't a rescue who'd been abused or anything. He came to us as a puppy, and I took him to a trainer, and the trainer said he has social anxiety. He's a fear of people initially, and you're going to have to deal with that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's different. So I'm like, how do we deal with this? Yeah. Because then he's done stuff like he doesn't like men particularly, and so we have men in the house like the guy from Bugmaster, who I probably has a real legitimate fear. He's probably been chased around my house when we weren't having better control of Luca. But I did see Luca one time kind of chase after a guy. When he turned his back, ran after him, and just nipped him. Not bite him, and let's make it clear. I would say nothing bad happened.
Was there blood?
As an attorney, I have to make clear. Yeah. I will say it was alleged. There was no blood. Okay. But it scared the guy, of course, and it scared us. And so we were like, we have to do something about this. So I'm very intrigued. Can you first tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, but also about Fear Free? Because it sounds amazing. I mean, what I've read about it, I think it's something our audience would love to hear about.
Absolutely. So growing up around pets, I wanted to be either a broadcast journalist. Diane Sawyer was actually my hero, and my dad was on Good Morning America for 17 years, and she was just my hero, role model. I wanted to either be a broadcast journalist or an animal trainer. And thanks in large part actually to Diane herself, I was persuaded to go out of broadcasting and choose a different career because she said, it's just, she came up to me one time actually after I'd had her sign this shirt for me, and that said the next Diane Sawyer. And she came up to me the next day at an anniversary party for Good Morning America. And she's like, Mikkel, it's dog eat dog. This is a really, really tough field. I just think you're too nice. I don't want you to lose that. You should really think about something else. And at the time, that was really hard news for me because I was in college going through to get my broadcast journalism degree. But after thinking about it, I thought, that's right. Like I want to be able to have my own opinion. I don't want to have to be, really hyper competitive, as Dan Harris also explains so well in his 10% Happier book about what that culture is like. And so now it's just such a blessing to have the best of both worlds, with getting to share information about pets, which they've always been my first love since I was little. And Fear Free is all about taking the fear, anxiety, and stress out of pets' everyday lives, from veterinary care to grooming to any time in the home, and with training. So as you described with your dog, it's really looking at the pet's emotional well-being and their physical welfare as well, and figuring out, okay, why is the pet responding the way that they are? And as you said, it sounds like a fear-based issue, and some of that can come down to things like socialization. So perhaps what your puppy experienced or lack of experience during that prime socialization period, which a lot of that actually starts out before you even get your puppy. So from 3 weeks to 12 weeks of age, and upwards to 16 weeks of age at the very top end of that socialization window, that all will impact that pet for life on the lens that they basically see life through. Yeah. So you can still socialize and help your dog to expand their comfort level, but you have a pretty set basically framework to go with, and that really does get set up with genetics and with that early socialization time.
Wow. I have a question. Let's say you work with a dog and you work on their fear and their anxiety. If the owner doesn't work on their own fear and anxiety, what you're telling me, because it's the environment, is that is there even a point if you work with the dog? But have you ever told the owner, listen, you need to talk to a therapist because this dog won't change until you change?
We have definitely. So I feel like a lot of what I do is human coaching at the same time. So yeah. I'm really helping them to do different techniques, and I'm not, this is all stuff, that I've done for myself. I grew up having a really bad phobia of flying and different anxieties that, so I've been able to kind of share some of those things that have helped me along the way, or that have helped my family members with different issues. But really trying to couple that with helping their dog. So sometimes I found that people get so busy or so stressed that they don't realize the importance of taking care of their own emotional well-being, and how that really impacts their entire family, whether it's their husband, they may be in class, they have this tension between them, and that's reflecting on how the dog behaves. Or the person, when I was in Seattle for quite a while, they were battling traffic. They have this crazy anxiety with living with that traffic, and it impacts the way that their dog behaves. So just learning different things like deep breathing techniques, for instance, that can make such a monumental difference in how their pet responds in class. They can go from not paying attention, all of a sudden doing that deep breathing. We're like focusing on how their body feels, just trying to relax those muscles. All of a sudden their pet goes from the place of like non-responsive to they're lying down, they're relaxing, they're behaving, and they're cueing off how their pet parent feels in that moment.
Oh, I like that. So that's obviously one tip that you can do, the breathing. Are there any other tips that you could share with us that we could use to maybe help affect our dog's well-being?
Absolutely. So I think having a plan, an action plan, really helps. So sometimes even for us trainers, I was on a call with a couple of my trainer friends the other day, just having a plan of what to do. And sometimes we are so in the midst of it that it's really hard to see. Even as a trainer, it can be really hard to see. So, coaching my other trainer friend, okay, here's what you can do to help your dogs stay settled and relaxed when you come home. And it's so easy to tell others to do when it's harder for ourselves. So having that action plan, if you're a planner, writing it out, having those steps. So having, for instance, a fear-free fortress, this is an area that you can put your dog in, that they can stay happy and relaxed in, has their chewies, their stuffed food puzzles, all of those really happy toys, comfortable bedding, and teaching them to go in that area beforehand. So you have that action plan. Here's a place we can place the pet. that they feel comfortable, happy, and safe in, have calming music in there. So that way you have a plan. And rather than just having to kind of leave it to chance of how your pet's going to respond, we have an area they can go to. And if it is a time when we can help train them and get them comfortable with that person, then we can bring them out on leash and have a more controlled interaction.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
And so that's basically what we've been doing with Luca, finally, is before, if someone comes to the door, what I do now. Now, he can jump, by the way, just brag about him. He jumps like 6 or 7 feet in the air.
Wow.
So literally, I have video of it. He's coming to the door and people are seeing him at eye level, just jumping up and down. So what we finally did is I just tell the person, excuse me, I'm to put my dog away. Yeah. They're very happy about that. And I just take him over to his crate, which he seems fine with it. My other dog has tremendous anxiety about being kenneled. She whines and cries the entire time she's in there. So that's a different situation, trying to make her feel more comfortable. So with 2 dogs, it's a little trickier.
What do you do, Mikkel, about the crying in the kennel?
So as you mentioned, sometimes dogs, they may be comfortable in a confined space. Sometimes they are better in an open area. So that's where having pet gates, having even like a little fence area for your dog, also putting them on leash. So having that station right there by the door, so we can just clip that leash onto like a front clip harness. So rather than clipping a leash to a collar where they can still pull forward, you have a lot less control. Getting a harness that clips right in the center of their chest, you are going to have a lot more control of that dog's forward momentum and also the direction that they're turning in. So that makes it a lot easier. Having that little treat station by the door so you can reward that good behavior. Sometimes we just get in that kind of action mode, like we're just responding to this crisis. And instead, what we want to do is we want to be proactive and direct our dog towards the behaviors that we want them to do and reward them for that. And we have to really set that up and it can be as easy as practicing 30 seconds a couple times a day, where you're practicing, okay, we're going to ask my dog to sit. And literally, even if your dog doesn't know a sit, you can sit there and wait with treats, and pretty much any dog is going to go into some kind of settled position. Even if it's just 4 on the floor, 4 paws on the floor, we're going to reward that. That's our starting point. So rewarding that good behavior really goes, it will send you ahead light years rather than just being in that kind of reactive mode.
And how much should you use treats? So we had one trainer for my other dog who, she had me wear a treat bag. I mean, her solution was I was supposed to wear a treat bag all over the house all day long and constantly give rewards to this dog. And to the point that the dog figured me out. And suddenly, she trained me. And we even had a little machine that you pushed a button and it would dispense treats to this machine. And so I finally decided, in the same time, my vet had recommended this trainer, and the vet said, your dog's getting fat. I mean, like, well, the trainer has me giving her treats all day long.
All day.
So what's the best use of those treats? Is it like a controlled setting where it's like, this is training time, and we're going to do specific things, and we're going to have treats? Or is it, as this other trainer told me, keep a treat bowl by your front door, and when the dog's being nice, or you hand the treat off? I mean, what's the good balance there? Because you also obviously don't want to make them overweight or you can get carried away with that too.
Absolutely. That's a really great point. So my dad is a vet. That's something I'm continuously aware of. So what I do personally is, say I'm going outside on a walk with my dog, I may wear a treat pouch there, or sometime where I know I'm going to be in a situation around other people, other dogs. But when it's just around the house, I have some little tiny containers of treats. You just the regular storage containers for food, little tiny ones, and I place them in different drawers around the house. So say that my dog does something like, all of a sudden there's a reacting dog outside, or a really loud backfiring car, or something like that may cause a dog to typically react. Instead of reacting, I can redirect their behavior. So I can ask them to come towards me, or if they just stay quiet, I want to reinforce that moment. So probably the top mistake people make is not reinforcing the good behavior that they want to see and only reacting to the behavior they don't want to see. Yeah. And so sometimes, for those dogs that get ignored for doing the good behavior, sometimes they'll actually act out because that will generate a response. And even a negative response to those dogs is still a response. So being really proactive is really going to put you ahead with being able to get that better behavior that you're really looking for.
Yeah, who else do we know that does things like that? Like toddlers. So it's very similar sort of.
Toddlers, 10-year-olds.
So there's also the negative. So you look at different ways. There's rewarding with treats. Then you have other people, like one trainer gave me this thing called pet corrector, this little thing you spray and it makes a noise that frightens them. Or I had one person who was working in my house and he saw that Luca was a bit out of control and he said, well, you just need to get a shock collar. You just need to train. Ooh. I mean, they all have, there's that negative. Yeah. What's your feeling? Because that's to promote some sort of fear in the dog to get them not to do. But what's your feeling about that or taking that approach? Should that be completely off limits? That's completely a bad way to do it. Or is there a way to incorporate some of that when the behavior is really out of control?
So it is really important to avoid physical punishment. So what that does, so I always say fear and force is cause for remorse. And that's really true with dogs, with any animal, because what we're doing is we are a lot of times we are punishing those warning signs. So the dog that growls, for instance, or the dog that barks, they're upset. So they have that underlying emotional state of stress, fear, anxiety, and stress is causing them to bark or growl or lunge in the first place. So if we punish that, we are not fixing how that dog feels. A lot of times we're actually worsening it. We just are stifling their expression of how they're feeling. Yeah. So they may temporarily stop growling, stop barking. Maybe a lot of times you'll see this thing called learned helplessness, where they maybe curl up and they get really quiet. But it's like that ticking time bomb where they are not feeling better, they're feeling worse, and they don't have those coping strategies with how do I deal with this situation in the future? How do I feel better? And so what happens is a lot of times the dog that is said to have bitten without warning because their warning signs were taken away. And so they don't feel better. They are in that self-defense mode, that reactive survival mode. And so a lot of times they will bite out of fear. And there have actually been multiple studies that have shown that any type of coercive training that uses like corrective collars or anything that intimidates or causes the dog to be fearful, it actually increases that dog's conflict, different signs of stress, and even outside of the training context. The dog is showing more stress around that person or just in that whole living situation, and there's more aggression that happens.
I think what you said, which is really important, is the proactivity. If you step out in front of it, and that's a daily discipline, and it's hard because we're all so busy, but I think what you're saying is to make time every single day to reward good behavior, to make sure that your dog is walked, is socializing, is doing all the good things. Then you're going to have less speed bumps, and then you're not going to have to use those kind of tactics. The proactivity, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It kind of works for
and just little tiny short sessions too. So I'm a busy working single mom, and for me, like, I want to make it really practical for people. So that's where you just have those little tiny treat stations around your home. You can easily get a reward to give to your dog. Yeah. And it doesn't always have to be treats. It can be attention. It can be play. It can be time to cuddle with you. If your pet does love to be pet, that's perfect, So you can look at any of those life rewards, what your pet likes, and you can reinforce those good behaviors with anything your pet enjoys.
I have a question. Are there any treats that are not bad for the dog? Like someone told me, give your dog a cold carrot or something and to chew on. And I was like, oh, that's great. Mm-hmm. That's not going to, is that a thing? Is that true?
There definitely are some fruits and veggies that your pet may really like. Our dogs really like apple slices. Yeah. Some of them like blueberries. The carrots definitely can be a big thing. Canned pumpkin. But anything that we can do in, just really the portion size is probably the biggest thing to look at. Yeah. So one thing, if your pet acts like they're still really hungry, something like green beans, we can add that to their regular meal.
Oh, that's
But what
good.
we want to do is we want to make their food go further. So rather than feeding them out of a food bowl, for instance, a fear-free way to feed would be to actually put their food into food puzzles. So these are these enrichment toys that really use their body and brain to get that meal out. And so you make that meal go further, and it really helps it to be a more natural process for them. It's more fulfilling. So just by changing the way your pet eats, you can help to build better behavior throughout the whole day.
Can you recommend some good puzzles? Because I have to say, I have tried that. And I did buy some very expensive puzzles that my dog
Did your dog
ate.
Yes,
the puzzle.
So did mine. He ate
and
the
destroyed.
puzzle.
So any good, like, can you recommend some that you think are really great? Or
Absolutely. I have I can even send you a whole list of different ones that I love. I have a whole stockpile. So my number one go-to is a Kong, just because they are, and you have the black Kongs that are the more indestructible one, and those really hold up. And what I do is I actually put canned dog food. So that's another way to feed your dog their meal. You put canned dog food, mix it in with a little bit of kibble even, put a rawhide on the end of it, freeze it. I Ziploc those. And so it just makes for a great way for your dog to stay busy. So when you're leaving for the day, perfect time to feed them their meal right then.
No, that's a great idea.
Awesome.
So with COVID, a lot of people got puppies or kittens or whatever because they're cute and we were home a lot. Now families are finding that they don't have the time that they thought they had when they got the pet. What do you recommend now for those families, how to make that adjustment in a way that's good for the family and for the pet? But also, can you share some common mistakes that people make with their pets? Because a lot of these people that are listening right now are new parents to pets. You know, it's their puppy or their kitten. They're a year old because hasn't been going on that long. Can you share some of those tips?
So the number one that I thought of is the guilty dog face. So people will come home, maybe their dog's had an accident, they chewed something up, and the dog has this face like where they give kind of those puppy dog eyes, they kind of slink down, and so they think the dog looks guilty. What the dog is actually responding to, and there have been studies that show this, is they're responding to the person's body language. And also over time, they learn certain situations, such as if there's shredded paper on the floor, if there's potty on the floor, they're going to get, the person's going to be upset. It's going to be scary. So it's first of all looking at, why is the dog doing this? They aren't doing it out of spite. They aren't doing it, just because they're upset, like mad at the person that they've left. A lot of times the pet is really in a panic mode. So what I really suggest, even for those dogs that aren't showing signs, is filming your dog when you leave. So and doing it a few times in 1 week would be helpful, just to get a good baseline of what your dog does. Sometimes pets are showing signs of stress, such as like salivating, panting, pacing, whining. And then if that's not resolved early on, it will progress to the dog starting to scratch to get out of exit points. So whether it's their crate, it's getting out of like clawing at the window, at the molding, at the door. So really paying attention to what your dog does and being able to help them early on by even proactively helping them to feel relaxed when you leave, and practicing even those times of separation when you're home can help them to be more happily independent. So that's really important.
Well, that reminds me of something in my own life. My older dog, recently, she's had cancer, and so she's been treated for cancer, and now she's had the thing with her knee. But the last 4 or 5 times I've left, and I'm not the only member of the family that interacts with the dog, she throws up blood. And so she's been to the vet over and over again, that immediately this happens and they take her to the vet, and the vet's like, well, she's just stressed. Well, why is she stressed? Well, it's always consistently, I left town. So how do you deal with that separation anxiety? I mean, what can I do to make it less stressful for her when I do leave? Because I do have to leave and I can't take her with me everywhere.
So one thing is definitely, so I would continue working with your vet, because sometimes they can also add in like nutraceuticals and pharmaceutical help. So sometimes when pets are really stressed, it's almost like when I was flying on the airplane and would have these awful panic attacks. A lot of times dogs are literally in this panic attack mode. So it's really, and when they're in that state, it's really hard for them to calm themselves down. Like you just can't reason with them. Like when I was on the airplane, you couldn't reason with me that, hey, calm down, it's not that big of a deal. Same thing with pets. So sometimes adding in something to help them relax will be important. So even something like Zilkeen is one such thing that is just like a little milk supplement that is akin to the same calming principle of when the dog was nursing as a puppy.
Yeah.
So something like that. I would also encourage, like, Adaptol is another calming pheromone that's been scientifically proven to help dogs stay chill, to relax in stressful situations. But I would also have a very predictable way that you leave. So sometimes for dogs, it's not knowing when you're going to come back. Is this going to be a short trip? Is this going to be a long trip? If you're taking out your suitcase, for instance, like, what does that mean? So starting to pair rewards with that whole process, getting her comfortable with it, and then having that cue, whatever it might be, that lets her know that, okay, this is going to be a little bit of a longer trip, because we don't ever want to trick our dogs. We want to be very clear and concise with what's going to happen. A lot of times, if they know what's happening and they know, okay, this is going to be a longer trip, okay, that helps me to at least, be able to kind of register that, versus like, I don't know when she's coming back. Is she coming back soon, or what's happening?
Yeah.
So that can be very, very helpful too. And being able to do different separation exercises, which I definitely, there are a lot of great exercises. Actually, there are free ones up on fearfreehappyhomes.com. So that would be a good
great
resource to look at.
And so Fear Free, your website, so a homeowner or a pet owner can go on and see tutorials, or what's on that site?
Exactly. Yeah. So everything we talked about today, so even from the food puzzles to separation anxiety to better behavior at the door, tons of free videos, tutorials, articles that are all vetted and free on Fear Free Happy Homes. So I would definitely suggest checking those out.
Well, that's great. Well, Mikkel, we have some Zoomer moms who have lots of questions to ask you as well. So come on in, Zoomer moms.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, let me introduce each of them in turn. We have Hannah Geddes, who has an adorable baby boy and a dog. Jennifer Marsh, who is the proud parent of 3 dogs and 2 children. And Julie Orchid, and Julie has had a menagerie of pets in her life: a snake, a ferret, a dog, a cat. I mean, she's got it covered. So, and she has 2 daughters.
Kids too. Yeah.
Yes. So let's start with Jennifer. Jennifer, do you have a question for Mikkel?
Oh, I have so many questions. So I am in a constant state of training dogs because I have 3, and I meant to get 1 puppy and ended up with 2. So I have 2 year-and-a-half-old puppies, and they're both barkers, and both, I think we had this weird dynamic going in our house because we've got, I have a 13-and-a-half-year-old dog who's been amazing and was so easy. And we did some training with her, but she was just always a chill dog. And the 2 puppies started out chill, but then they kind of grew into more anxious, barky dogs who, after a lot of training, they're not that reactive to people anymore, except at our house. But they're very reactive to other dogs on walks. And if I take treats with me and I work really hard at it, we can, by the end of the walk, be in a calm state. But it's an uphill battle. And I don't really know how to calm their fear of dogs, because I feel like we have this like pack mentality, because I often walk all 3 dogs at once. And so it's like, feel like they're defending me, they're defending the pack, and I don't know that there's any chance I'm ever going to be able to walk with these dogs and have them not, like, I'm trying to get them to stay in a heel and not pull on the leash and all these things, but I'm also trying to be calm. I don't know how to do all that at the same time.
So one of the best things that I would start off with is preventing the rehearsal of the behavior in the first place. So if your older dog isn't much of a barker, he might be fine to go on the regular walks with all of them. Otherwise, walking them separately. So maybe just the one of the younger dogs with the older dog going out on a shorter walk. So you can divide that walk in half. So that way each dog gets a little bit of a shorter walk. That might be a good way to do it. So, and then when the other one's inside, that's a perfect time to practice that alone time. So that's another important thing with dogs that have been adopted together, is you really need to build up their ability to stay alone and to be independent if needed. So that way, if they ever are separated, they feel calm and relaxed with that. So giving them that food puzzle, for instance, putting them on the front clip harness that gives you more control of their direction, and so that way you can turn around if needed. But being able to teach them different coping strategies when they see other dogs on walks. So one of my favorite games, for instance, is Find It. So we're playing Find It, where we just scatter some treats just right down there on the sidewalk or in the grass for them to sniff. And what it does is, to the other dog, it's a sign of disengagement. So it's a sign like, oh, okay, I need to give the other dog space, like he's no threat. So it makes your dog appear less threatening. So other dogs are less likely to react at your dog. And then also it's calming for your dog. So they're sniffing, and when they're sniffing, it engages a different part of their brain rather than that reactive mode. So, and always remember that distance is your friend. So if you ever see a dog that's coming up, if you can add in just enough distance to keep your dog calm and relaxed, where they're still happy, taking treats, ears are forward, then over time you can start to get closer and eventually work into being able to take all 3 dogs on a walk. But we want to prevent that rehearsal of that reactive behavior, because if you take them all out at once, that it's a recipe for stress for them and for you. So being able to work up to that, I think, would be a good goal.
That's great.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people take all at the same time because they feel like they don't have the time. But I think it's important to know that you have to really make that time.
Yeah. Julie,
Yeah,
do you have any questions?
Even dividing that walk in half too. So, thinking about quality rather than quantity. So quality of a walk, if you have a really nice, calm, happy walk versus a longer walk where they're barking, getting crazy, what they're doing is they're rehearsing, they're practicing that behavior. They're going to be better at it over time. So that's where, just being able to do shorter walks, that's okay. A couple 10-minute walks a day, I would say that that's a success. So don't feel like you have to do everything all at once and do too much. Just a little bit is going to go a really long way for your dog.
That's great. Julie, do you have a question?
Great advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have so many questions, but Mikkel, most importantly, please tell us what your dogs' names are, because they're hilarious and would love to know who you're holding and who was sitting next to you.
So the one on top of me is Otis, and then Indiana Bones. He's chilling over there in his bed.
Indiana Bones. It doesn't get better than that.
It really doesn't.
So we all have tons of animals. We've gone through this dog training. I have a sheepadoodle who has become my BFF, and I have agree with you on the socialization. Excuse me. I take that dog everywhere. The most fearful I've had that dog is in a car wash when it's going loud and it's, crazy. So I take her everywhere with me. And so I think that has helped her adapt tremendously to everything in life. So that's the first thing. But do you feel like when any dog can be had the fear taken out of it and trained? I mean, obviously, I love what you have to say, because this session is full of information. Distance is your friend, but tell us, do you come across dogs where you're like, I don't know that we can do this? Because I've run across that with trainers with other animals that I've had. So could you speak to that? And, is every dog able to be, so to speak, rehabilitated?
So I think that there definitely can be that misconception that, every dog can be. Sometimes it's just not practical. Sometimes there aren't the resources. Love it when, sometimes there's a great dog rescue, a dog haven where they can go, they can live in peace. But for those dogs that have had this long history of aggression, and that's the difficulty that a lot of rescues run into, is when a dog has this history of biting, sending multiple people to the emergency room. It's really looking at risk factors. Okay, what is the dog's history? Sometimes a bite is, not all bites are the same, for instance. So when I look at a bite, I look at, okay, what were the warning signs leading up to it? What was the situation? How deep was the bite? I've really only had a couple dogs in my, I think it's going on 13, 14 years that I've ever have been like, this is, an option may have to be euthanasia. And that's a really hard decision, but that you really have to make ethically, because for that dog, their quality of life is so low at that point in time. Right. And really for the people, it's like this huge risk to people, to other dogs. But literally, I think I've only made that once or twice. And so in most cases, I've been able to find different ways that we can work with that dog.
And see how you're holding your dog. What does that do for you? Tell us a little bit what you think about the therapy of animal therapy.
Yes. So when we are petting a dog, we actually release that oxytocin, so that bonding hormone, that love hormone. And not only do we release it in ourselves, we release it in them too. So we have that, we are lowering serotonin, lowering blood pressure, or raising that serotonin, so that happy, feel good feeling. And then, you know, we are lowering our blood pressure, lowering our heart rate. So, you know, the one thing that's really interesting with COVID, one of the things my dad worked with Ed Cragen at the Mayo Clinic, and one of the things he suggested to my dad, most of all, the best way that you can really like fight COVID beyond you know, precautions is actually having a pet, because pets help our overall health because they lower our stress. And when we, you know, stress is related to all different types of illness, and you know, so he's like, you know, the best thing you do is just really relish that time with your pets. And if you don't have a pet, think about getting a pet, because they are good for our health, good for our emotional health, our physical health. Like, there are just so many benefits to having them.
Honestly,
Absolutely.
just watching you, I feel like my serotonin is going up. It's such a
Me
beautiful,
too.
it's really beautiful watching the way that dog is
beautiful.
nestled in your arms, and it's just such a natural motion for your hand to be petting. It's just, it's really, really beautiful.
You know, it's interesting with Otis, he actually went through 5 different homes before we got him at 7th age. So he was one of those hot messes of a dog that, you know, just needed a chance. He just needed love and, you know, needed that positive direction. So he's, you know, one of those dogs that's a poster child for, you know, a dog that just needed a little bit of help. And, you know, we love him so much. He has a lot of personality, a lot as a trainer. So you know, it's like, I think that's the thing as like a mom and as a trainer, it's like, you got to give yourself grace, like not be so hard on yourself. Cause it's like, I think the more we stress ourselves out about having to get everything perfect, the worse it is for them, the worse it is for us. Like just doing your best, making it practical. And, you know, and really he is a poster child for a dog that really just has had transformation. So it's really cool to see that.
That's great. Hannah, do you have any questions?
So I actually am like a full-time groomer. So my questions, because I am fear-free certified, and I actually used to be a tech for a couple years right before I started grooming. So I think the only questions I have are like, how do I help owners like be more comfortable? Because like we can't have owners next to us when we groom. So how do I like kind of help them know that their dogs are okay, but also like help myself with like dogs that aren't getting that work at home to be more comfortable with me, because I can't like give out treats or anything, which is tricky too. So
yeah, so definitely one thing that I really like is having a treatment station, so a non-slip surface that your pet is comfortable and relaxed being handled on. And that can be a good way to transition them different places, like from in the home to going to the groomer, going to the vet. A lot of times, one of the scariest parts of being in those places is that those slip and scare moments. It's a primal fear. And especially being up on an elevated table can be really scary for them. So having that non-slip surface, encouraging the dog to get up there themselves if possible, is wonderful. And you know, when the pet parent is working at home, having that treatment station, you make it like their happy place, like where, you know, really good things happen there. You know, it's where you can practice some of that handling with them. And one thing I would definitely encourage is working with pet parents on, okay, what are the signs that your pet is getting stressed? What are stopping points? I think having stopping points is so important, because you know, I love that you're fear-free certified, because so many times like a dog will go into a groomer or to a vet and, you know, they push past the point where the dog is comfortable. The dog goes into that reactive mode. They start to, you know, they're growling, they're snapping, they go into that bite. Then it becomes a struggle, you know, and in that traditional handling before fear-free, where, you know, you are holding the dog down and forcing something. So, you know, being able to have those stopping points, that when we get to this level of stress, we're going to stop here. Having practice sessions, so victory visits where the pet parent can come in, they can give treats, you know, so like having them practice, having these happy experiences. And, you know, my daughter, Reagan, she's actually 12 now, but she had a big fear of going to the doctor, and it all would happen through the nasal flu spray, like that just And so, you know, we had to do the same thing with her, like having these happy experiences, going to the doctor, getting rewards. So knowing that after she goes there, she gets to go get Starbucks, her favorite, like that. And same thing with dogs. It's like, we want to pair happy things happening with some of those places that could be a little scary. So we make it worth their while.
Yeah, no,
So
that's super
for
awesome.
those
Thank you.
people who
Yeah,
are,
thank you.
for those people who don't have a pet yet but want to get a pet, and are interested perhaps getting a rescue. I mean, because I've gone through the process of getting one from a breeder, but if you're getting a rescue pet, what do you recommend that people look for? Like when you don't get a lot of time to choose the pet, you get to read a history or whatever, you get some idea. But what would you suggest when selecting a rescue pet for your family?
Well, I'm part of the Gray Muzzle Foundation, which is all about senior pets. And I think being open to a senior pet is just such a blessing, such a gift. I know one time I went in to adopt a dog. I wanted a young dog, and I just fell in love with this senior Pomeranian named Mr. Teddy. And he was just the best dog, like incredible dog. So I think, being open to perhaps an older dog, it's, a lot of times they are more settled in. You really are going to have a better idea of what they're going to be like versus a young dog. You really don't know. A lot of times their real personality starts to set in at that time of social maturity. So they go through sexual maturity, and then eventually comes that social maturity. But it around like 10 months to a year and a half, that's really when they're going to start settling in. You may see more of those anxious behaviors come out. So having an older dog, you're going to have a little bit of a better idea. I would suggest looking at petfinder.com is one of my favorite resources. I've used this for looking at all of the different dogs that I've adopted. And that's great because you can search for what type of animal you're looking for, kind of, if you have an age range in mind, size in mind. You can also look at different things on there like energy level. And I would read between the lines too. So if you see something like very attached only to selected people, or, look at, okay, if I work outside of the home, that may be a little bit hard. My dog may be a little bit more clingy and may be more prone to separation anxiety. So looking at any of those clues, and if you have any idea of what happened in their previous home, that can be helpful too. And and breeders, like, I'm not against breeders by any means, especially if you can find a good breeder, but it's very important to be able to look at where the dog comes from. Unfortunately, puppy mills still exist. So, we want to look at someone that really invests in their puppies. So they are socializing their puppies. The puppy lives with the people rather than in a separate place. So that's so important. And because what your puppy experiences, for better, for worse, or just lack of experience, really will impact the way that they view the world and interact with the world throughout their whole life. So whether you're getting them from a foster, from a shelter, from a breeder, really pay attention to, what does this puppy experience? What positives do they experience? And, being able to also integrate that into your home. So if they have any training, such as a lot of times maybe they've learned to sit, maybe they've learned a hand target, things like that, being able to carry that into the home gives them a predictable, happy way to interact with you and with the whole family.
Well, this has been great, and as predicted, it went by way too fast.
Yeah.
Mikkel, I'm going to have a whole new Luca and Cookie. I'm so excited. Where can we find you on social media?
So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Mikkel Becker, Mikkel Becker, Becker. And also you can find fearfreehappyhomes.com, or for any pet professional, you can look at Fear Free certification at fearfreepets.com.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, Zoomer moms, for joining us. You all asked some great questions, and I hope, just like my pet is going to be doing great afterwards, yours will too. Thanks so much for your input. And thank you for joining us. And you can check us out further on our Instagram page at Inside the Moms Club. We have a website, Inside the Moms Club. And thanks again, Raha. It's been
very
great.
Welcome. It was so
being
fascinating
here today. And we'd also like to thank our sponsor, Catch Events, which brings style, experience, and grace to your next exceptional event. You can find them on Instagram at Catch Events _. Be sure and do that if you're going to be looking for them there. And thank you for joining us today. Time has passed so fast, but we're going to be back next time with more celebrities and exceptional moms just like you. We know that your me time is precious and valuable. Thank you so much for spending it with us. And remember our motto. It's so important. If you don't laugh sometimes, moms, you are going to cry. Nobody wants to cry. So keep laughing and join us next time on Inside the Moms Club.